Hey, gang, welcome back to another CirdecSongs interview. This is going to be a fun one, but before we get started, I'd like to ask you to subscribe to the channel. Please like this interview because I guarantee you're going to like what you hear, and comment, comment, comment. My guest today, I am happy to call not only a musician I admire, but a personal friend. I first heard him in this little combo called The Bears, along with Adrian Belew and Rob Fetters and Chris Arduser. He is a supreme bassist who has many other projects in the fire. I've always wanted to say this. All hail the glory that is Bob. Bob Nyswonger is with us. How you doing, sir?
I'm doing just fine, thank you.
Excellent. Thanks for hanging out with me for a little while.
No problem.
All right. Let's just jump right in because you're the talented musician. I'm just a guy over here talking. Tell us about the bass. Tell us about how you came to be a bass player. What's your musical background?
Oh gosh. Okay. This is a little interesting. My first instrument was I took a stab at clarinet in third grade. Um, and it was not fun. It was not fun for anybody to listen to me. Here's what it was fun because I figured out a lot further as far as notes on the thing than I was at scholastically. I was still, playing do do dee 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 dee
Right.
dee, and that didn't really get me going, as far as inspire me. So, but I did learn how to make some really cool sounds on it. Got into the upper octaves and stuff, just playing around with it. So that it was. But that was my first stab at trying to play an instrument. I had my folks got me an auto harp when I was like 10 years old or
Oh,
11.
goodness.
And so that was easy. I mean, just zing, zing, zing. But a good friend of mine, when I was, reaching puberty, bought an electric guitar. And then I realized this is something I could maybe play. And, we kind of figured out some rudimentary Paul Revere and the Raiders riffs and stuff like that. And
Right.
that got me excited enough that I wanted to have a guitar of my own. So I did wind up, my first foray into guitar was I in seventh grade shop, I was given a ruined guitar to fix. So
Huh.
I spent like 3 months, sanding it and gluing it where it was damaged and stuff. And the day, I had the hardware for it, the tuning pegs and whatever. It was just a very primitive acoustic guitar, like a lower end model, obviously.
Right.
Um, I put it in my bike basket to ride home. It came out and shattered into a million pieces.
Oh, no.
So that was my first guitar that I never got to play. And then I got an acoustic guitar for my birthday or Christmas that year when I was 12, I think. So anyway, didn't even know what a bass was really. I had never seen professional live rock bands or anything like that when I was 12 or 13. I was growing up in a small town called Binghamton, New York. Not that small, but pretty small. The only real concert I had been to at that point was, and this is interesting, it was Ravi Shankar's Festival from India when I was 12. I got to
Interesting
go see
start.
that, which that was a very eye-opening experience. It just made me want to play music because those guys looked like they were having a lot of fun and doing amazing things with their hands and feet and whatever.
Right.
So let's see. My dad got a job change, and we moved from Binghamton to Sylvania, Ohio, in the middle of eighth grade when I just had turned 13, I believe. And when you're that age, you don't have a lot of friends. And I did have a decent guitar at that point. It was a Harmony acoustic guitar or whatever, but
Right.
there was enough to play around with. And so since I didn't have a lot of friends, I spent a lot of time playing the guitar, and kind of teaching myself songs and back then you could buy the books of the albums that you loved. I had a book for Blonde on Blonde and Between the Buttons, and just learned how to basically scrape out the chords. The transcriptions were horrible, many wrong, but that is what it is. Also, my folks had got before we moved had bought a piano, so I was able to kind of get a start on that a little bit. But anyway, once we moved to Sylvania, boy, bands all over the place. It was really a big part of junior high and high school life there. And my brother and I would go to after game dance and hear these exciting bands playing some, Journey to the Center of Your Mind and that kind of stuff. And that got me excited about it. So, I did eventually get an electric guitar, started playing in a small band with no bass. It was 2 guitars and a drummer called Dad's Old, with an E, Old Zipper. Dad's Old Zipper. And we played blues tunes and songs we made up. And I was aware of what a bass guitar was and was learning what the function of it was. And I never really aspired to be a lead guitar player. I wanted to play a rhythm guitar, because it's easier to sing with,
Makes sense.
But then it turned out there were a lot of guitar players in Sylvania High School, but not many bass players. And I think I've said this before, when I in 9th grade, I saw Rob Fetters' band play. He had a band called Thor Shackle.
Okay.
And he was as good, in a way, as good then as he is now. Just he had what it takes to be a great player. And I said to myself, I don't know how to play lead like that, and I don't think I can. So maybe if I get a bass, I can play with that guy. And that's what happened. We became friends and discovered we liked a lot of the same music anyway. So that was my switch to bass. I switched over to bass in 10th grade.
Well, the chemistry between you two is evident. I mean, there's nothing. I talk about it all the time. There's nothing more important in a band than chemistry. It's not just 2 guys up there playing. You're working off of each other.
True, absolutely. And it's funny. It's we're just we kind of rub against each other in a way. We're not totally on the same page all the time, but we have, I think, full respect for each other, and that's really what it takes.
Tension's part of the fun. Tension's part of the
absolutely. Yeah.
If you're all simpatico all the time, I think the music would be kind of boring. You have to be able to bounce and compromise. I mean, look at the Police, for crying out loud.
Absolutely, yeah. The spice of life.
Exactly. I was going to ask, and you probably kind of filled it in for me, and this is the beautiful thing about these chats, is I was going to ask you for your aha moment. When was it that you knew this is what you wanted to do? You wanted to make music.
What was the motivating factor? I just knew that I liked making sounds and working with other people. It just seemed like the fun thing to do. I was the first band that really got me going was the Stones. I was not my sister was into the Beatles. She was 7 years older than me. Right. So I was kind of like, that was her band, so I became a Stones fan. And it was simple enough music that I could actually kind of learn how to play it, starting out. And but then, once we got into the whole high school thing, junior high, high school, there was a big music subculture within that school, and I think evidenced by all the names you probably know that came out of that school, including Rob and Chris Arduser, and a fellow I play with today, Scott Covret, who's in Tickled Pink. There are other musicians here in Cincinnati that are kind of, people think of them as Cincinnati musicians, but they really came from up north. And the reason we migrated down here is just because it's a bigger city and more receptive to different things. And Toledo was definitely a cover band town, and we wanted to do more original stuff.
Makes sense. That makes sense indeed. Now, like a bazillion other people, I came to know you by way of the Bears, because I was a fanatic of that Adrian Belew fella.
Mm-hmm.
and I just kind of followed him from from group to group. Now, then I heard the Bears, and I'm like, okay, well, this is a bit more pop music, and I'm going through my progressive rock renaissance, shall we say?
Mm-hmm.
But when I'm listening to this, your first thought is, oh, this is pop music, but your second thought is, wait a minute, this is intelligent pop music. These guys actually know what they're doing back there, and that bass player, he's got a pretty good pocket back there. I don't like defining a musician's sound, especially when the musician is, right in front of me here. So I'm going to let you do it. How do you define the Bob Nyswonger bass sound?
Oh, geez, I don't know if I can. I just have a style. That's all. I know some theory, so I try to incorporate that stuff, and I have some technique, so I try to incorporate that stuff. Um, but I'd say just generally, I try to. Well, who did I look? The people I really looked up to when I was learning how to play were the Johns, John Entwistle,
Mm-hmm.
John Wetton, and John Siegler, who played with Todd Rundgren at the time. Those were the three guys that I really loved, and they all have different styles of playing. Um,
Right.
what I loved about Entwistle was just his sound was incredible. Live at Leeds, so it's like the definitive bass sound. Um, real, just aggressive, snarly, and you could hear every note he played, which I thought was really cool.
Right.
Um, I had a ton of respect for other people back then and learned from like Jack Bruce, for instance, or more of a jazz influenced guy. Um, but John Wetton, I saw with the Lark's Tongues band, the King Crimson band in
Right.
70, saw them in 73, I think,
That sounds
doing
about right.
Lark's Tongues. And that changed me too, because he just was, he had elements of jazz in his playing and just interesting rock, I thought. And it was just something I hadn't heard, because that band would actually improvise on stage,
Right.
and I just thought that was really cool. And John Siegler I liked because he was a guy that was obviously a pro player. The early version of Todd Rundgren's Utopia he was in. As a bass player, I thought he kind of had it sounded to me like he listened to James Jamerson a lot. He kind of had used a lot of the same little techniques to push things forward. It was very up and up kind of feeling bass approach. Um, Obviously, he wasn't a soul player, but you could tell he'd listen to it.
Right.
And I just thought he did a really good job of providing underpinning to a wide variety of stuff, and I dug his playing. So those are the three guys that mostly influenced me. Now there are others as well. Believe me, like I said, Jack Bruce, and I was lucky to see Chris Squire very early, and when I think it was Yes's first U.S. tour or something, and I had to go out and get a Rickenbacker not too long after that. I had a
That's the
Rickenbacker
rules.
bass in high school. I had a Rickenbacker bass in high school, which was kind of before they were, I got it right when I saw it. I was like, I
Right.
got to get one of those, because it's got the high end. And I didn't realize they shipped them with flat wound strings on them, and those flat wounds sound like flat wounds after about 3 weeks. I had to figure out what kind of strings to put on it to sound like him and everything. And I was just lucky to see some just great players when I was young, and I tried to soak up as much as I could. I saw Doug Rao with Santana, who was like one of the first thumb guys.
Cool.
And he was fantastic. The old version of Genesis with Mike Rutherford, I thought he was a really good player. Um, Never got to see Jocko live, but I did see a lot of film on him.
World We're all
So
switching
anyway, I
those
just,
also.
I went to a lot of shows and I tried to soak up as much as I could just from watching people and kind of assimilating what things that they did that I thought I could do. And
Would you define yourself as being hyper focused on the bass player when you saw these shows, or were you just taking that in as part of the whole?
part of the whole, part of the whole. I'm not, I don't know. I, I'm not bass centric. I'm more interested in the song and the cumulative effect. You know, some of my guys that I really enjoy are not technicians particularly. They just do the right stuff. Who's an example of that? Victor Krummenacher plays with
Okay.
Camperman Beethoven, and he's got a lot of other things going on right now too. And it's funny because another guy here in town that I really enjoy talking to is a guy that's been playing this rock music for about the same amount of time I have. His name's John Schmidt, and he's a big fan of Victor too, even though we don't really cross over in a lot of different ways. It's funny that we both kind of said, "Yeah, that guy's good." He thinks of the right stuff to do. It's memorable, but not obtrusive, and it's just super musical. That's all.
Makes sense. Makes
Yeah.
sense. I got ahead of the game slightly when I talked about the Bears. You and Rob and Chris have a little history before that, correct?
Sure.
All
Sure.
right.
Yeah.
Walk us through it.
Well, I was in a band called the Raisins from my first real professional gig was after I graduated from high school. I did a summer playing with a band called Johnny and the Hurricanes. Um,
Nice.
they people know of them. I was 17 at the time and spent a summer doing that. So it was my first taste of being like in a professional setting.
Mhm.
Johnny had matching shirts for the band, and we went and played the Wisconsin State Fair and stuff like that. We did some stuff. But then after that, I joined, and then I had my high school bands I was in with, one of which was with Rob called Red Hot Tots.
Hmm.
And then I was in another band with Chris called Legs. And that was Chris and his brother and whoever else floated in and out of that band. My friend Doug Perkins, who lives in Kansas City, great
Hmm.
jazz musician, taught at Guitar Tech. I mean, he's fantastic. It's just funny. There's a lot of really strong musicians and players that came through that school and that setting, and we're in that very competitive environment. But anyway, I joined the Raisins after I was kind of like half in and half out of college, and did like 1 year basically. I did a couple quarters at Ohio State, came back and finished up the year in Toledo, um, and joined Rob Fetters and the band called the Raisin Band back then. That
Okay.
was 74, and the Raisins existed for 11 years in different forms. We had different players in and out. Um, started off as just basically a top 40 cover band, but we always had some original music that we were working on and recording and trying to demo. But finally, well, not finally, in the mid 70s, like 76 or 7, we got Chris Arduser to play drums and a fellow at the time named Tom Toth. Now he goes by Tom Caulfield. He's a fantastic acoustic guitar player, has a solid career doing that. Um, that band kind of made me think that we could do something original, like really go somewhere, because we had both Tom and Rob were really strong writers, and I was starting to write a little bit at the time too. And then we went through a couple more personnel changes, and then in the early 80s arrived at Van Powell, drummer that I still play with now, great
Hmm.
songwriter, fantastic musician, just he's a great musician. And Ricky Nye, who is in this town celebrated, actually he plays all over the world. He's a boogie woogie guy. He's in the
Okay.
Boogie Woogie Hall of Fame or whatever. So we had that band, Rob and myself and those two guys. And that band was the band that recorded the Raisins record that Adrian produced. Adrian
Okay.
we were friends with him at the time. So he produced that record. We had a regional hit. Went on and we were on fire as far as writing material. I know many people are not familiar with it, but we released a 3 cassette set. Now it's a 4 CD set called Everything and More, which is basically live. There's like 60 live songs on there.
Okay.
We were just, it was a friendly competition. Everybody was trying to get their songs in there, and we were writing a lot of songs, recording a lot of songs. We didn't get to record them in the studio because we didn't have time or the money. So we had the first Raisins record, and that did well, and we were talking about doing a second one, but in the meantime we're playing these gigs and writing these songs and a lot of live tapes, and that's what that Everything and More is a
Okay.
document of that. Do you have a copy of that?
I do not.
Well, you're going to have to get one.
Yes,
I think
I do. I
I
think
think
I
you're
could
going
have
to have
sworn
to
I heard
get
Rob
because
mention it a
what's
couple weeks
funny
ago.
about that record is if you listen to it all the way through, you're going to hear several themes that are on the first Bears record that came from some of those songs. It's just, we Adrian kind of listened to him and said, I like that, and so we would kind of rewrite the songs, and there's not all of them, of course. Some of them, I'm going to say 2 or 3 of the songs on the first record, though, for sure.
Okay.
We're like lifted from parts of stuff from that.
Well, it's a natural progression. That's what that is.
There you go.
Makes sense. So the songs are growing and things are getting a bit more serious. Like I said, the Bears wrote intelligent pop music, or write intelligent pop music. Nothing is dead just yet. But what you come from a vein that's much more Rundgren or XTC than someone just out there trying to get a hit. What drove that?
Well, actually, I was not even aware of XTC when people were comparing the Bears to XTC. It was before I didn't know about them.
Right.
My songwriting inspiration actually was Ray Davis.
I can see that.
I was a huge Kinks fan. To me, it was the big 3 were the Stones, the Kinks, and the Who. That was that's what I grew up really wanting to do. And we liked Alice Cooper a lot too back in the early 70s. There's just the showbiz and the fun aspect of it, Plus we lived, growing up in Toledo, we were very close to Detroit, so we got to see a lot of Detroit bands that were very influential.
Okay.
It was it was definitely a regional scene, very high energy.
That has to be interesting. I'd never been around a scene like that. St. Louis had a decent scene in the 90s when I kind of started to get into things, but I have trouble imagining what it was like just to be in a multi-state type scene.
Yeah. I mean, we had the James Gang from Youngstown, and we had Ted Nugent and the Frost and SRC. Those bands that kind of bubbled under the surface back in the early 70s, but they had deals, but they didn't really have national success. Alice Cooper did, but Alice Cooper was kind of transplanted they were started out, I think, in Arizona or out west, and then they wound up outside of Detroit. I mean, the Stooges, MC5, all that stuff, the Detroit stuff. That was Brownsville Station, very instrumental in just giving us a template as far as, you can rock out and be high energy and still write a kind of a cool tune if you're up for it,
Okay.
But the guy that I always admired the most was just for songwriting was Ray Davis, for sure.
Makes sense.
Yeah.
So now I think we're pretty much up to the Bears.
Yeah.
When did you know it was a thing? When did it feel like this was real?
Well, at the time, Adrian wanted to assemble a band that was world-class pop band, that would be successful. And that's what we set out to do. And that's, when we get together and work on this material, and we worked on it a lot. I mean, spent a long time putting that first record together. We had it together and we're out playing it live a year before the record came out, or even more than a year, because we didn't get a deal right away.
Right.
And the original drummer for the Bears was Larry London,
I know that
from
name.
Nashville, who had played with one of Adrian's, solo tours that he had done in the early 80s. And he played on, I think, Twang Bar King record, maybe.
Yeah, he did.
Yeah. Larry was a beautiful guy, great guy, fantastic drummer, kind of elevated us as far as, we did one demo session with him. The demo's still out there somewhere, but we were doing those songs that, some of the Bears songs. And, he told us in no uncertain terms we had to go out and get digital metronomes right away. Like clicks. You get one of those, plug it in your ear and play with this, because we were not that disciplined. We weren't
Right.
session guys, not used to playing with clicks and stuff. He was a
Right.
total pro. So that kind of made us elevate our game a little bit. But anyway, it became, we were getting to the point where we needed to go out and play to test out the material to see where we were at. And when push came to shove, Larry was not willing to go ride in a van, because that was the budget we were at. We were a van and truck, van and truck. So
Right.
the band was in a van, and Larry needed a bus. He was a big fella. He needed more space. So he just politely declined. And then at the time, Chris Arduser was available, and Adrian was familiar with Chris because he had produced Raisin's demos from the late 70s. We had known
Mm-hmm.
Adrian back then. We had a long relationship with Adrian, and he said, "Well, let's do Chris," and it all just kind of worked out. Everybody had pretty common musical ideas, and we're willing to just try things all the time. And we did a lot. We spent a lot of time just rehearsing and getting our live sound together and figuring out what the band's supposed to look like. It was we spent a lot of time on
Okay.
Yeah.
And there had to be a little songwriting arm wrestling perhaps going on, or did you decide who was going to handle it right off? Or
no, we just would work up stuff, and what wound up being on the first record was just the material we thought was the strongest. We kind of said, here's what we want to do. We want to have a sound, we called it East meets Midwest. So we wanted to have some like exotic sounds. Adrian was using a lot of guitar synthesizer at the time. So we were trying to incorporate some exotic sounds, but have kind of Midwest songwriting sensibilities,
Right.
which Adrian was. I mean, he was a very good songwriter, traditional type songwriter himself, as evidenced by his first few records. They're very eclectic, and we all liked that. We
Right.
didn't want to be one thing all the time or have like that much of a I don't know. We did want to have a focus of the two guys in front, and that's why we staged the band we did. We had two guys up front, Adrian and Rob, and then Chris and I were split out, which was unusual because rhythm sections are usually close together. And that took a little getting used to, but Chris and I had played together for so long, we didn't have any problem with it.
Okay.
We always made sure our monitoring was okay, and we knew how to play together. So
And there's a bit of that telepathy that goes on when you got that. Once again, back to chemistry. When you know I don't have to worry about so and so doing this thing, he's going to be right there when I need him.
Right. We didn't have to worry about anything, and to be honest, we did several tours in the years from 85 to 88, and I don't ever remember having a bad one. I mean, we had some nights where we were a little off or somebody was honked off about something, but we really had a good time. We enjoyed playing, and people seemed to dig that.
Nice. The worst part about the music business is that the business tends to get in the way quite a bit. So, if I remember the tale correctly, you guys were signed to IRS Records.
Well, a subsidiary of IRS called Primitive Man Records.
Gotcha.
Okay. And it was I don't know if it was anything much more than a tax deduction for Miles Copeland. I have no idea. I mean, we had our own label, but we had access to the machinery of not only IRS but MCA, which was that's real promo and stuff. So I mean,
Right.
we had a lot of support and help. Um, we made a mistake. We made a mistake. Our second record kind of was rushed out because we didn't have all the time that we spent crafting the first one, and we knew we had to come up with a follow-up record.
Mm.
So there was, I think it's a good record, but I don't think it's quite the powerhouse the first one was, just because of that. We were kind of under time pressure, and there were other things going on business-wise. There were a couple of different people that wanted to manage us at the same time, and a lot of distractions. Let's just put it that way.
Makes sense.
And we had done several tours, and the label wanted us to do a tour with Squeeze, and this was right after we had gotten off doing the promo tour for Rise and Shine, and they pulled the plug on us like two-thirds of the way through that tour. And if you're used to going to a town and doing radio and in stores and all that kind of stuff, and the promo goes away, boy, do you feel it. It's a whole different deal. So anyway, it was proposed that we do this tour, and nobody wanted to do it because we'd be opening up. We'd never done a tour where we were the opening act, and we wanted to be the draw, which we had been because we were playing smaller venues.
Right.
So we had always kind of controlled the show, and usually our openers after we were signed to Primitive Man they were more often than not one of the other bands on that Primitive Man label. We did had Teray. Mikkel Rouse was the composer, and they did several opening for us. And there was a band called the Balancing Act. Willie Aaron is still out there playing a lot, I know, and he was in that band. And they were great, and they were really cool and fun. And but we were the used to being the drawing card, as it were. And after putting out our second record, we thought, well, why are we opening up for Squeeze? Because they were kind of long in the tooth at that point. It wasn't like it was more of a cult band, and we thought, I don't know. I don't know what we were thinking at the time, but we weren't thinking clearly.
I love me some Squeeze, but you got to do what you got to do sometimes. I understand.
Yeah, well, I mean, in retrospect, we probably should have done it, but I think we were kind of burned out because we had done so much touring anyway. It was like, do we really want to go out and open up a bunch of more shows? And
real fast, because a lot of lay people don't really understand the intricate workings of having label support or what have you, as opposed to being out there on your own. You said when the support disappeared, you could really tell. How did that manifest itself?
Well, it just manifests itself in that you don't, you come into a town and you don't have to go do something immediately. You don't have to do a phoner with somebody or go to a radio station or go to an in-store and play an acoustic set or something like that, because that's all arranged by label people that are kind of advancing the show and doing all the things you do to get a buzz going locally that this band is coming to town.
Right.
I don't at this point, I don't know how much of that even goes on anymore because everything's online. Who the hell knows? I don't know.
That's actually pretty appropriate. It seems like a lot of seat of the pants promotion these days.
I know that there's like two major labels now. I mean, there's
pretty much. I mean,
and do they have staff? They might. They in like huge markets they might. But when we go out, we go into a town in Canada, and there'd be an MCA person there helping us out.
Yeah.
Making sure we did schmooze the right person or did whatever we had to do to promote what we were doing. So
makes sense. I was just sitting here thinking the closest I've come to the publicity machine, as it were, when I went and saw Jazz is Dead a couple of months ago, and I talked to Steve Kimmock. That was the first time a representative came out of the dressing room to get me. and take me back to the band. Otherwise, it was just me contacting people via email or social media. Hey, can I talk to you for a second?
That
Well,
sounds
yeah,
like
sure.
today. That sounds like more like today. Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah, yeah,
yeah. So the machine is definitely different. Um, so the support disappears, which
yeah.
means things
And
kind of
then Adrian was on to the next thing at that point. He had to be thinking. He had a higher lifestyle to support than we did at the time. He had several kids, and he was used to making some pretty good money, and he really done a yeoman job in trying to get the Bears going. We all
right.
worked really hard at it. But then, he got a new solo deal and an opportunity to do a David Bowie tour. So, of course, he's going to do
Yeah.
that. And of course, at the time, I felt we kind of felt betrayed a little bit because, we put so much into it.
Right.
But, Rob and Chris and I carried on as the Psychodots and kept, recording records and playing gigs and making new fans. So, you can fold your tent or you can just keep going and do what you can do.
Right.
That's what we did.
And for the gang out here who haven't listened to the Psychodots, what are you waiting for? Because this is good stuff. Let's talk about that band. Let's talk about because you have it's no small catalog that you guys
No, we
put
got like
together.
6 records out or something like that, a couple DVD and well, we we were a real band, and we never had a national deal or anything, but we were just doing what people do and maintaining our regional base and going. We would, we would play towns within 100 miles of us,
Mm,
basically. And in Cincinnati, you've got Columbus, you've got Indianapolis, you got Louisville, you got Lexington.
right.
That's those are all decent sized towns, and they're all pretty close. You can drive there and play. Columbus,
Makes
Toledo,
sense.
yeah.
So there was
So that
always
was
somewhere to
what
go.
we focused on at the time. Yeah.
Well, it works. It works. So that takes us up to, and I don't have the year in my head. And at what point do you realize that you have to start doing other things other than
I
just trying to make
realized
music?
that actually, personally, I realized that when the Bears stopped playing, because
Okay.
I had 2 young children at the time, and that's when I got a real estate license and started having another gig, which that's my life to this day. I'm still doing both. That makes me a master of neither, probably. But I
That's
tell
all right.
people, between music and real estate, it's almost like having a job.
Yeah.
It's
I've still been looking for one of those real jobs myself,
uh,
between the military and the PD. I've yet to have a real job, so I have to
uh,
find out what that is. And I was going to shamelessly plug you. If you're in Cincinnati and you need some real estate, there's your
well,
guy.
I'm available. I'm online. Just Google me. Google me. You go to my website. You go to whatever. I've been selling houses for 30 years. It's and that's a rewarding thing too. I have no real interest in retiring.
Right.
It's not like I hate what I do. I like playing music. I like recording music. I like helping people find a place to live. These are all things I can feel good about.
And you can't tell me there haven't been a couple of music fans that you've sold real estate to. There's got to be
Oh
some kind
no,
of
they kind of
cross
cross over
pollination.
nicely. Yeah, I've gotten gigs from people I've sold houses to, and I've sold houses to people I've gotten gigs from. So there you go.
Nice.
It's
Works out very nicely. Works out very
yes,
nicely indeed. Let's just go ahead and finish covering the Bears, and we can move on to your
sure.
material because you came back. Was that 2001? I think I saw in my copyright yesterday with Car Caught Fire, which
Car
is
Caught Fire was recorded over a couple of years. We just in the late '90s. It was after Rob Fetters hit a point. I think the Psychodots stopped playing all the time in the like around '97 or so, and he was again. He had kids too. He had 4 kids. He was doing commercial music production out of a studio here in town. That's a full time job,
yeah.
So um, that's what he was doing. But we didn't burn any bridges with Adrian. We love Adrian. Everybody got along well. So at some point, Adrian said, "Why don't you come down, and we'll just cut some tracks." I'm going to say this was maybe 98 or 99. And then over the next couple of years, we'd go down for a weekend and do 3 or 4 songs. And what wound up turning into Car Caught Fire came from those sessions. And it was just a lot of fun to do that. And I think those are our best records, really, the last 2.
I'm not going to argue with you at all, because Car Caught Fire is such a good record.
It's jam packed full of good songs. Well, we were kind of saving our stuff for the Bears. If the Bears did something, so that's what we did. I mean, in the meantime, we're still recording solo stuff and doing different projects, other projects. But that was to me, as far as my career goes, that was the highest I got. And I still like everybody involved with that project. We just had a lot of good times and made some really good music, I think. So that's something nobody can take that away from me.
Absolutely. Was there any trepidation ever when you wanted to bring a song forth? Let me put this in front of these guys and see what happens.
Oh, sure. That's your moment of terror. Because you're putting your stuff out in front of other people that have written stuff that you think is great. And personally, I always toward the end I was always doing demos, typically just because I just was not real super comfortable just sitting down and playing a song on acoustic guitar and trying to sing it properly.
Right.
So would do demos, and some of those demos, the guys heard them and said, yeah, like When She Moves on Car Caught Fire, that I had a pretty good demo of that song, and I think that helped me sell it, but it goes both ways. I mean, sometimes somebody would just sit down and just play a little something, and that tune on Eureka, what is that one?
I can hear it too, and
We Never Close.
Yeah,
that was a song that I had demoed for the Psychodots, like 12 years ago, and then I just started playing that riff, and they're going, that's kind of catchy, maybe we can do something with that. So you don't know what's going to come out of if creative people get together and decide they're going to do something, they're going to do something. Yeah.
I read an interview with you guys through a journalist that I admire. I don't remember who said it. I just know it was your band. When someone talked about the terror of putting together a well thought out, well produced demo, and then having the other 3 guys look at you and just say, "Okay, what else you got?"
What else you got? That's the case. That's the case. I mean, well, what's kind of fun is that these bands I'm playing with now, Bucket and Tickled Pink, there's a lot of those songs that didn't, pass the first muster or whatever.
Right.
They're still good songs, I think, and they're winding up on records now, 20, 30 years later, and with a new take on them. But, if the fundamental idea is good, it doesn't have a date, doesn't have an expiration date on it.
Music has a half-life, kids. That's just the way it is. To satisfy the fans out there, the door has never been completely closed on the Bears, correct? It's just
that's correct. That's correct. Yes.
You're just hibernating right now.
Yeah, there's we have different people dealing with different things here, and if the time is right and everybody's up and healthy and ready to do something, I certainly wouldn't preclude doing something again. Even if it's just doing some dates, I would love to do it. I mean, geez, who wouldn't want to play with Adrian Belew or Chris Arduser or Rob Fetters?
So I'd say Robert for that matter. Rob is just, the more I listen to Rob and the more I listen to you guys, I'm like I said, I come into it by way of Adrian, but you realize, hey, those guys behind with Adrian, they're really good too. I should pay attention to what they're doing.
Maybe that's why he decided to work with us. Who knows?
Could
It's
be.
very possible. Very
It could
possible.
be. I'm not going to ask you to pick your favorite child, as it were, but are there
Hmm.
any tunes from that catalog that you get more sentimental about that you like more than others?
Which the Bears? You mean?
Yeah, yeah.
Tunes? Wow.
I'm never going to ask you for your favorite one because
Yeah. Well,
no, no.
to me, I was the first album is really special because we worked on it so hard and for so long. So like I'm gonna say like Man Behind the Curtain and Figure It Out. Those songs. I mean, if I went out and played them tomorrow, I'd still have just as much fun doing them. They're
That's the big part. I mean,
yeah,
the songs that you can look down on the set list and say, "Ooh, I can't wait to play this one." So
right. Well, to me, and I guess I'm a sap or sucker because I want to play every one of them. So it's,
and we'll allow it.
yeah,
I guarantee you, we'll be sitting right there in the audience, no problem. Um, Life goes on. The door's not closed there, but you have other musical projects out there. So I'm
yeah.
just going to open the door wide open and say, tell us about some of your other musical projects.
Well, gosh, there's a bunch of them, and well, the one that's imminent right now is Bucket, and Bucket is Bam Powell, who was a former Raisins drummer, great songwriter, great singer, and Lee Rolfus, same thing, great songwriter, great singer. We have a record coming out, 10 tracks. It's going to be available in about a month called Wallomatic. The last Tickled Pink CD came out in 22. It was called Trips to Win. I think you have that one.
I do. It's a great record. I reviewed
Yeah,
that record.
yeah.
It's great.
That was
It's a great
recorded
record.
right here. All these records were recorded here.
Oh, nice.
Um,
Very nice.
um,
And one of my
and
favorite T-shirts, by the way. That is,
that's a good shirt. It is a good shirt.
it's a great T-shirt. But for the
Um,
moment, we'll focus on the music, and the music is great.
yeah. So and Tickle Pink is working on some we're recording tracks for whatever comes out next. Um, there's a band. I think I give you New Sincerity Works? Did I give you that?
I don't think so. It's
Okay,
it's not ringing a bell.
uh, that's a band with it's not a band that plays live really. It's more of a project band called New Sincerity Works with the main writer is Mike Tittle who played drums with a friend of mine, Roger Klug, who's going to be sitting in with Bucket next this week.
Nice.
Roger's a great guitar player, great songwriter, producer. Um, I like hanging out with these kind of people. It's so he's gonna join us just playing with Bucket. He's a legit musician. He plays with the Cincinnati Pops and has his
He's got a
own.
couple of chops. Okay.
Yeah, he's not bad.
He has
And
potential.
the drummer that played in his trio, Mike Tittle, conceived of this solo project called New Sincerity Works. There's 4 of their records out, and I was, played on those. Um, I've just been super lucky. I've got to work with so many talented people here in town, either just playing gigs or doing sessions or whatever. So that's what makes the world go round.
That it is. That is it. Is there, and this is kind of a cliche question, but I like asking anyway, is there anything you haven't done that you like to do musically?
Haven't done well. I'm always up for doing new stuff, and what would I like to do? I'd like to be a successful touring musician again. That was fun. It's different now than it used to be. Um, to me, doing music live, it's the most spiritual thing I'm involved with. It's to me, it takes the place of being a devout whatever.
Right.
Because if you're in a situation where you're plugged into the time and letting things happen um, in real time and not, you know, doing exactly the same thing every time, that's when I feel like I'm doing what I'm supposed to be doing. You know?
Makes sense.
Yeah.
Makes sense. I'll let you off the hook on this one because kind of a variation on the previous question. Who's the fantasy band? Who's in the fantasy band you want to play with? And I understand you've worked with some great people before, but who else is out there that the phone rings and there's just a vapor trail of Bob of heading out the door?
Oh wow. Um, I can't say I'm in my fantasy bands. I mean, the people I work with, I love. Uh, I I've been so lucky. I never had to play with crappy musicians. I never have had to. Um, it's because it's not the only thing I do. So I get to, if I don't want to do something, I don't do it.
Makes sense.
But I don't really spend a lot of time fantasizing about that. There are bands that I would love to. I mean, there are musicians I'd love to do something with. Um, I don't know when the opportunity would be. Bam Powell said when John Entwistle died, he said, "Well, I thought Pete Townsend would call you up right away because you could do that gig probably better than anybody else could do it. As far
Yeah.
as being copping Entwistle's vibe and whatever." So any of my heroes, of course, I'd love to play with. But gosh, I got to play on stage for years with Adrian Belew. I mean, and Rob Fetters and Chris Arduser and Scott Coverett and Lee Rolfus and Bam Powell. So these are all and Mark Sastry, who's in the Bluebirds. That's another band I play with here locally. You saw the Bluebirds.
I did. I was about to
You
shamelessly plug you myself. That was highly enjoyable.
Yeah. See, so I'm just a very lucky cat. That's all. I'm grateful for everything that has come my way.
Not going to make it about me, but I kind of smile to myself when I think about seeing that set, because I was in, for you guys who don't know, I was in Newport, Kentucky, across the river to see Bethany and Thank You Scientist, and
right.
I let Bob know that I was in town. We were supposed to see each other the next day, and we're at was it Latitudes? Is that the name of the place?
Right.
We're at Latitudes. You should come see us. Now it's almost midnight. It's raining. I have no idea where I am. I have no gas in my car. And I've never been in this region before. And my friend's like, "Are you going to go?" Well, of course I'm going to go. So let's go over and see this band. You guys were burning. You were burning. I could just see how much fun you were having up there.
Yeah, if you're not gonna have fun, you might as well stay home.
Absolutely.
It's to me that's the gig. I mean, you're there to make things better. And so even if I had a crappy day, I try to if you step out and you're ready to do something that involves an up vibe and trying to make people happy, that's what it's all about.
Yep. Like John Lee Hooker said, music is the healer.
Yeah, no doubt.
I will let you off the hook on this, and it's all about you now. Shamelessly plug yourself. Where can we find your music?
Well, I think an internet search is where you'd begin. I have a solo record that came out in 2006, so I guess I'm about ready to start working on another one at this point. I'll probably that's kind of a goal. I'd like to get another collection of my stuff out sometime in this decade before I shuffle off this coil, and just if you're in Cincinnati, come to a gig. If you're a wealthy promoter and want to bring one of my bands to your town, I'm sure we can make arrangements. I'm easy to get a hold of. Because I'm a realtor, and realtors have to publish their phone number, and their email address. So there you go. So I'm an easy guy to get a hold of. If you have a recording project you think I would be appropriate for, happy to do a track. We do like a little bit of an honorarium of sorts, if we do that, but it's very doable. And I've done tracks for people that are overseas. So that's the one good thing about digital communication is it's all over the place.
Nice. I was just about
Yeah,
to say, when all else fails, find him on Facebook, kids, because he's
that's it. I'm
he's
out
out
there.
there.
Yeah.
Excellent. Bob Nyswonger, I can't thank you enough. This has been so much fun. We'll have to do it again sometime. I look forward to hearing, well, everything, whatever else you have coming out there, and
You need to come back to Cincy.
I do.
You
I
know
do.
you have a place to stay.
I do, and that I'm glad you brought that up. The follow up to my first book, the sequel, as it were, I wanted to talk to you. I said I want to do a chapter called "I Spent the Night with Bob Nyswonger." It just kind of
It's
was like,
not as
what now?
seamy as it sounds.
See, exactly, exactly. That's going to be a fun one to write. I can't begin to thank you enough, and I'll do it publicly for your generosity and what have you. It
Oh,
was
well,
such a great day. And
thanks for listening. Without people listening, we're just a bunch of idiots making noise in the basement here down
I
here.
like it.
Uh, we have talked about coming to Chicago too because there's the Dali exhibit at
Yeah,
the Art
yeah,
Institute.
yeah. The
I'd be
artist
very
too.
interested in seeing that. And there's
Uh-huh.
the Cubs. The Cubs.
Well, if they do back-to-back series with your Reds and my Cardinals, we can definitely we can do some cross trash talking to the Wrigley Field fans because that's always fun. Or when all
Mhm.
else fails, you can see guaranteed rate field from my window. So
Oh, all right,
I'm
all right,
it's
yeah.
12
Go
blocks
see
away
the
from
Sox.
the White Sox. So
Yeah.
it'll be a good time. But thank you for this. We will talk to you soon. Take care
Take care, buddy.
and be safe.